What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. I'm Keith Franks, the designer of Castles of Caleira, and today we have exciting news about said game. 7 years later, after its original release on Kickstarter, we are back with a deluxe edition. We've come back, we've changed a whole bunch of things. I'm kind of excited to show it off. I have done some kind of the gameplay stuff on this channel before, where I came in and talked about what kind of changes I was making and showing off a little bit of gameplay. This time it's just all kind of showing off the game itself, just what the final product is going to look like. So first thing and most important thing is our brand new rule book, which I'll leaf through really quickly for you. Ready? Look at all those pages. There's so many things. And then towards the end, we kind of have some nice breakdowns and extra details on how some of the different cards work, which is really what the rulebook should have been originally, but due to errors that happened at the time, also it was my first game, a whole bunch of stuff happened. I really didn't know how bad it was until it came out and we saw it. And so this time we spent the time, all those years of learning, and we made sure that we had something nice to be the new rulebook in the game. I don't actually have the box here to show off with me because the box changed from the sample version that I got to the final version, but I do have all of the cards. So I'll show you this Clifftop Prison as an example, which you might recognize as a card that came out in Season 2, but another cool thing is that we've updated the card back to include at the bottom here the 1 point icon, because face down cards are worth 1 point. This is just a thing to kind of help you remember, which was like a suggestion that we got kind of early on after the Kickstarter release. And I was like, well, I'll make that happen. And this is me making good on that. Then we have the Season 3 release. I was going to slowly leaf through so you can get an idea of what is in there. So the Season 3 is intended to be a more competitive 2-player setup, whereas instead of the Princess Spire, which basically you lose the game if your opponent trebuchets it, which is like really good for younger kids and stuff to kind of get used to the game, because rather than worrying about a mathematical advantage, they're just looking for a specific card and trying to interact with it. Instead, we have the Tide Skipper. What the Tide Skipper does is when it becomes face up, you choose one of your opponent's face up cards. The Tide Skipper swaps with that card and then turns itself face down. So if you turn it face up multiple times, it will move around and it will shuffle cards around a little bit, but it is worth -3 points. So if you can swap with something and then use the throne room to turn it up and cancel its effect, it will be stuck on that person's tableau until they can turn it face down with the barracks. So that's one, like, rather than where have you put this, can I destroy it, it's can I set this up to be stuck with you, can you send it back to me, which I think is much more like enabling of strategic options, and that was something I wanted to lean into a bit more with this design. And so I'm really happy with how it goes currently, but I'm really happy with how everything has turned out altogether. We've got a couple of nice upgrades for it, being the rule book, being the card upgrades, and there is just a couple of extra cards in general. For example, this Dragon Skin Galleon, which is part of the Ships of Caleira micro expansion. So all your classic castle pieces are in there, but then also we have a couple of the ships. And then also we have the setup cards. So for example, this one is the Season 1 setup card. It's not super easy to read because my setup is really awkward and I have sleeves on all the cards because I'm a maniac. I'm sure some of you can relate. For example, this is the Season 2 setup, and that's just the Season 1 and the Season 2 are the exact historic setups that came with that version of the game. And then the Season 3 setup is the most recent one, which you can see has the ship on it. But also there's a 4-player brawl mode where you play all cards, which is 28 cards, which divides more nicely into a 4-player experience. And there's a couple more cards that work well in multiplayer specifically for that, so that you can play a good 4-player game. Whereas always I was kind of more interested in having like a good 2-player and then like a goofy fun 3-player, 4-player. Now it's a lot more balanced across all of these things. I think 2-player is like the more competitive, serious one, which is kind of what I wanted. And then 3 and 4 is a lot more negotiation, and like maybe protection or whatever. You're trying to set up a thing, maybe you're interacting with other people and getting a vibe for what's happening on the board, which I think is much more interesting. And that's kind of what I was going for. And so I'm really happy with how everything's come together. And I'm really excited to announce that it is available with the Quest suppliers. That is my co-publisher. I will have a link in the description so that you can go and find it, because it's available. We actually released it during PAX, but we were so focused on Murders at Tilwood's Manor, our bigger game, and this is kind of like a reprint with a couple extra things added to justify doing it. So it wasn't like a big, crazy, exciting announcement at the time, but now that PAX is gone, we've done a whole bunch of Murders at Tilwood's Manor stuff. I did want to come and announce this because this is also cool. This is my first game. I get to come back, fix a couple of mistakes that I made, and release a game that I'm really happy with. So hopefully you'll check it out and you'll love it as much as I do.